Are the New York Mets trying to contend in 2024? I'll discuss that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X, Finkelstein Ryan. You also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Now, I wanted to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I decided to hop on and record a show because I'll be tied up with the family for the next couple of days. I wanted to put something out for those of you who wanted to listen on Sunday or Monday, and I'm not sure if I'll even have a show until Tuesday. So I just wanted to get a little bit of content out for you all for the holiday, and also because I recorded a live show after the Yoshinobu Yamamoto signing, but I wanted to take a step back and really have a measured look at where the Mets are, because it was Yamamoto or bust, right? That's all we've been talking about throughout the offseason, and now okay, the Mets busted. Question is, are they really out? Are the Mets now in a position where they're just going to try to fine-tune around the margins, take another couple of flyers, sign some guys that are coming off down years and hope for some positive regression and just see what happens? Are they going to actually make some free agent signings over the next week here leading into the new year? Or are they just going to go the complete opposite direction and trade Pete Alonso and blow it up? So I want to go through all those options, right? And the first part of this is to look at the stand pat zone, right? What does the Mets opening day roster look like if they did nothing? Where are they? So here's my best guess on what you could put out as a starting lineup come opening day. Brandon Nimmo starting in center field. Francisco Lindor starting at shortstop. Jeff McNeil at second base. Pete Alonso batting cleanup at first. Who bats fifth? Those are the only four hitters you look at the Mets lineup and you say, yep, feel great about it. Francisco Alvarez as well, but I'm not going to bat right on right, back to back with Alonso and Alvarez. So I stuck DJ Stewart in the 5 hole, playing left field, because that's where you're at if you're looking at this Mets team. 6th batter, Francisco Alvarez. 7th batter, again, we're going right-left, Brett Beatty, playing third base. DH, Mark Vientos. Right fielder, Starling Marte. There's 5 hitters in that lineup that you like, and there's 4 big question marks. And Alvarez is still kind of a question mark. He had a good rookie season, but he was streaky. So, again, you like the first 4, but bottom 5, Stewart, Alvarez, Beatty, Vientos, Marte, not great. Is there an option off the bench that you love? They got Tyrone Taylor in that trade with the Brewers. That gives you a 4th outfielder and a guy that doesn't really have any splits issues, so you can bat him against lefties or righties. He'll be competing with DJ Stewart for a starting outfield spot with the way the roster is presently constructed. I think he's the 4th outfielder, but still, at least he's a major leaguer, right? So he's going to be on the roster in some capacity. You have Joey Wendell, who the Mets signed, the one position player that they have signed to a major league contract this offseason. He gives you a defensive utility infielder. And then you got Omar Narvaez. And then I couldn't even decide who a 4th, bench piece would be. I really don't know. Cooper Hummel, maybe? It's tough. Okay, so it shows you that the Mets really do need to add at least one guy. Now, if they still had Ronnie Mauricio, all right, I'd say don't worry about adding position player. They're not close enough to contention that'd be worth spending on a Justin Turner or a Jorge Soler. We'll talk about those guys in the next segment. But the point being, now without Ronnie Mauricio, I think they had to pick up a bat if they want to be at least somewhat competitive this season. Go to the starting rotation. It's Kodai Senga, and if you go to the depth chart at MLB.com for the Mets, they got Luis Severino as the number 2 on this team. Then they got Jose Quintana, Adrian Hauser, Tyler McGill. That's your 5-man rotation. Joe Lucchesi, Jose Budo. That's some depth. David Peterson will be out until the second half, but he's some more depth. And then, there's the pitchers in the minor leagues, the Mike Vassals, Christian Scott, all those guys. I will be breaking down all of the top prospects on the pitching side in an episode early this week. But still, if you're just looking at what the Mets have in-house currently, they need to address this rotation if they want to compete. But apparently they're out on Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell. So where can you look to address this rotation? We'll talk about that more in the next segment. Then you go to the bullpen. Edwin Diaz, Brooks Raley. Only two arms that you can trust. Now, they still have Drew Smith. They signed Jorge Lopez. They're hoping for a big bounce back there, but that's definitely not a given coming off a really bad 2023 season. Michael Tonkin, I think he's on a split deal, but regardless, he's got a pretty good chance of making the bullpen. And then it's a million guys. I broke down on a full podcast. You can go back and find it. The bullpen additions that David Stearns has made this offseason. And there's a lot of good options there, but it's also a lot of, I hate to call it dumpster diving, but it's a lot of guys who are coming off down years. Some guys who weren't even pitching in professional baseball last year. There's a few of the signings. I mean, there's just a lot of guys, a lot of darts they're going to throw at the board. Do I think the Mets can build a competent bullpen this way? Yes, but you don't have a lot of confidence there. So you look at this team and their needs and what has not been addressed yet. They need a reliable starting pitcher that can be the number 2, but I don't know if they're going to get it. They need a setup man, so they have at least somebody who could pitch the 8th inning before Edwin Diaz, because right now it's, I guess, Brooks Raley, but then who's your lefty in the pen? Maybe it's Jorge Lopez, but again, asking a lot. Maybe it's Drew Smith. They need to add a setup man if they want to be some type of a contender at all. And they probably need at least one bat in the lineup. So the question that Mets fans are asking on Christmas is, are there any presents under the tree? It doesn't seem like there will be before the holiday, but can there be, a belated present before New Year's? Are the Mets going to make a move? Or are they just going to sit on their hands and say, hey, this is really a transition year. This is a year to see what the young guys have, to give a lot of shots to guys like Luis Angel Acuna and Drew Gilbert, and maybe even a Jet Williams coming up from, they all finished the year in AA. Some will probably start the year in AAA. This is the time to see what you have in Mike Vassal and Christian Scott in the rotation. Is it just that? Are they leaning into development this year? Or are they going to still make some moves? I want to talk about how the Mets can still salvage this offseason. So I'll get to 3 signs they could make that would at least give you a fighting shot in 2024 that won't hurt your long-term flexibility. But then in the final segment, we'll talk about the other option, which is sort of blow this up a little bit, continue the sell you started at the deadline, and turn the page already to 2025. So we'll go through those 2 options in the next couple segments. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Monday, Christmas Day, you got the Giants versus the Eagles. Who knows? Maybe the Giants are going to pull off an upset, throw a little $5 money line bet down on them. Or if you want to hedge your happiness, throw $5 on the Eagles if you think they're definitely going to beat the Giants. You win that, you get the $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Still got a little bit of the NFL season left, the college football playoffs, and also the NBA action every single night. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including the spread, player props, over-unders, and more. So if you want to play today, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. Again, a $5 winning money line bet gives you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. If you don't want to miss out on any of the latest Mets news this offseason, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where I can send you updates anytime something breaks on the New York Mets. You can also ask me questions at any time. Try to reply to all the questions I get from the Locked On Mets insiders. I really appreciate all of you who subscribe. You can find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, There's one free agent the Mets have to sign this offseason. Now that they missed out on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's Shota Imanaga. Now, the reason why they had to sign Shota Imanaga is because it does not appear like they're going to sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. Snell, he got a qualifying offer attached to him. So that means that you'd have to give up multiple picks to sign him. He also definitely appears to want to pitch out on the West Coast. I think he's a Washington native. He actually really wants to pitch for the Mariners, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. You're looking at the Giants as a potential team. The Angels might be in the mix. Who knows? Maybe the Dodgers keep on spending. But the point is, Snell wants to be on the West Coast. You don't want to give up draft picks to sign him. And he's going to ask for maybe $30 million a year over 6 years, 7 years. And the Mets aren't going to be in that mix. And I get not being in that mix. Jordan Montgomery is a different conversation, but he wants Carlos Rodon money, which was $27 million a year over 6 years. And that's for a guy that, while he was great last year in the playoffs, long term, I don't know if you think of him still, even after what he did, as anything better than a 3-starter. It's a lot of money to give a 3-starter. Now, maybe that's what guys make these days because everyone's getting paid as a starting pitcher in free agency right now. There's guys like Luis Severino who got the $13 million from the Mets. There's guys like Tyler Mahle coming off Tommy John, who might not even pitch this year, probably does, but much later in the season, who got $22 million over a 2-year deal. So many guys are getting paid. So I get Montgomery's asking price. I think somebody meets him. I understand the Mets not going in on that. But Shota Imanaga is the guy that you can get who's going to come in lower than that. You might not be able to get him for the 5-year, $75 million that you got Kodai Senga for. But if you mirror that contract when it comes to an opt-out after the 3rd year, if you give him $20 million per, you could sign this guy, and the risk isn't crazy, and he has the chance to be a frontline starter. Kodai Senga, he had a 1.89 ERA in 2022, his last year in the NPB. Shota Imanaga had a 2.66 ERA, but he also led the league in strikeouts. Strikeout per 9 rate of 10.6 compared to Kodai Senga's strikeout per 9 rate of 9.7. He also walks about half the amount of batters as Senga did in the NPB, and we saw those walks follow him to the States. The whip for Shota Imanaga was better than Kodai Senga's whip. He's a left-handed pitcher who has a fastball with really good induced vertical break, which means it can really get that rising action on guys. Those are from a low release point, can sort of jump on hitters. This is kind of the other option. If you don't throw hard, throw a fastball with a lot of induced vertical break. And that fastball should play at the big league level, even though it doesn't come in at 97. It's more going to live 91 to 93. But again, from his arm slot, the break that he gets on it, it's a really good pitch. He has a splitter. He also has a changeup, a slider, a cutter, a curveball. His primary 4 pitches are fastball, splitter, changeup, slider. He's got a lot of options. He's going to be able to strike out batters. I think the question is going to be, could the home run ball, hurt him a little more against MLB competition? There is a chance, but he's worth the risk. I don't think that he's not going to be at least a 3 or a 4. And again, if you pay him $20 million, say, that gets the job done and you can sign him for that. Guys who are 5-starters are getting $13, $14 million. So it's not even that big of an overplay if he doesn't reach his absolute apex potential. But hey, this guy also started the game against Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, the winner-take-all game. It was Imanaga on the mound. I really think this is the guy. I think he fits their window because you sign him to a 5-year deal with an opt-out after year 3 like Kodai Senga. You have him for 24, 25, 26. And, you might have him beyond that, but I think he could be the number 2 on this team and be a solid one. So that's the one guy. If the Mets can sign Imanaga, I'm okay with this offseason. Now, if it's not Imanaga, you got to at least get Lucas Giolito or Mike Clevenger as guys that at least I think will give you innings. Otherwise, look at this market and find me the starting pitcher the Mets are signing. Like Hyun-Jin Ryu, I do think it's a worthwhile gamble because he looked good coming off Tommy John, but he's coming off Tommy John at 36, 37 years old. Are you going to sign Corey Kluber and Rich Hill? It's just guys who are past their prime. Zach Greinke, Noah Syndergaard. There's just not a lot in this class. So look at Lucas Giolito. He had a 3.79 ERA in his first 21 starts with the White Sox before he got traded, 121 innings. During that time with the White Sox, he ranked in the top 20 among qualified starters in innings pitched and strikeouts per nine, and his ERA of 3.79 ranked 30th. So he was a top 30 starting pitcher in baseball. Gets traded, falls off a cliff. But this guy, even though he was traded from Washington to Chicago early in his career, he basically was a White Sox for the majority of his career. He still lives in Chicago. To get traded and then to end up in that waivers process, that guy went through just hell in the second half. I think he'd be a lot better. And he's at least thrown 160 innings pitched or more in every full season dating back to 2018. So at least you know you're getting innings from the guy. And maybe he's not great overall throughout the season. Maybe he pitched to an ERA over 4. But I feel like at least 3 times out of 5, he's going to give you a chance to win. And the Mets could use that in their rotation. And he won't turn 30 until July. So to me, it's sort of Imananga or Giolito. Otherwise, I'm not feeling great about the Mets' chances to contend at all. Clevenger had a nice season last year with the White Sox, 3.77 ERA, 131 and a third innings pitched. It's an option. It's not a great one. At least I think he'd give you innings. But if the Mets just end up signing Rich Hill, whatever the other equivalent is, I just don't see them competing this year. They have to address that rotation. Otherwise, what are you doing? And beyond that, look at their bullpen. As much as I can believe in David Stearns and believe that he can build a bullpen out of nothing, there's still nothing. You need to get a setup man. And there's 2 guys I look at, Aroldis Chapman and David Robertson. Now, I didn't ever want Aroldis Chapman on the Mets for a multitude of reasons. But I'm at the point where I just want to see the Mets contend next year in some capacity, be a team that has the shot at the playoffs. And if Aroldis Chapman's still pumping 102 and you can put him in your bullpen in the 8th inning in a regular season as a regular season pitcher, I don't think he's going to be great come October. But honestly, to get you through the season, to be in the hunt, so maybe at the wild card, not the wild card, at the trade deadline, if you're in the wild card race, you can swing another deal or something like that. That's the type of guy I think you could sign. You could sign him to a bloated 1-year deal and get something done. David Robertson, same equation. I'd much prefer him. I just don't know if he's going to want to sign up to come back to the Mets when, who knows, maybe the Yankees could call and he might just decide, I'll go back there. It's where I spent a large portion of my career, come full circle for him, team that has an actual shot at the World Series. So I don't know. It's tough to get those guys when you're not, a viable World Series contender. But the Mets got to overpay for somebody on a 1-year deal because money doesn't really matter this year. They're that far past the luxury tax. Put something out there that can, be at least somewhat viable product that you can win. And to me, the 2 things you have to do is you have to add a starting pitcher and you have to have at least somewhat of a reliable setup man. Beyond that, I'd love to see them get Justin Turner. I just don't know if he's going to want to sign up to play for the Mets after everything that's happened. But if you could get Justin Turner or Jorge Soler so that you have a actual viable DH and someone who, for Turner could play some third base, for Soler, only started 14 games in right field for the Marlins last year, so it's not a great option, but somebody you could conceivably stick in the outfield. Maybe, right? Maybe you can make things work. To me, the most important thing, though, it goes back to the rotation and the bullpen. Get a couple more arms you can trust, and if you end up going into the season and the whole sort of thought process behind your starting lineup is Starling Marte is going to be better, Jeff McNeil is going to be better, Brett Beatty's going to be better, Mark Vientos has a chance to really provide a lot from the DH spot with given a full opportunity, and you have some top prospects waiting in the wings that could fill in at some point. I can at least buy it a little bit. I can say, all right, fine, they didn't address their position players too much, but at least they were able to get some arms. If they don't get those arms, though, at what point do you say, let's just blow this thing up further? Let's see what we can get in the open market for Jose Quintana and just make our pitching that much worse. But hey, it's a guy that you might be able to get, some really good return on just because teams are desperate for starting pitching. And on the last year of his deal, maybe you don't know. Pete Alonso, that's a massive question mark. Jeff McNeil on his contract before he has another bad year. Could you flip him? I want to talk about that side of it in the final segment here. At what point do you just blow this thing up and really punt on 2024, or is that not in the cards at all? So we'll get to that in a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming platform on YouTube covering all the latest in the world of sports. It's Locked On Sports Today with our local experts from every team and our league-wide experts from each league. Locked On Sports Today has you covered with everything going on in the world of sports, and it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube. All right, so what about hitting the nuclear button? The New York Mets are in a position if they don't add to this starting rotation, where again, I reiterate, it is Kodai Senga, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, Adrian Hauser, and Tyler Miguel. It's not a good rotation. The bullpen, it's Edwin Diaz, and your guess is as good as mine. Now, are they so far away that they can't even contend anyway? You could make that argument. If they don't land Snell, Montgomery, or Imanaga, and there's a chance that they don't approach any of them, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I mean, I could tell you about Nayuki Uesama, who we've profiled at justbaseball.com, and he's a better fifth starter than I think you might find from other guys. Like, there's some upside there to tap into. Come on. Like, that's not going to make you contend. I'm not going to waste my time or yours breaking down Uesama. But I would tell you, if you're interested, Google Uesama, Just Baseball. You'll find a great article by Arm Layton about it, and he can tell you everything about Uesama. My point through all of this is, if you aren't going to sign Imanaga, if you aren't going to sign Giolito, what's that rotation going to look like? And if there's no shot that you can contend, what do you do with Pete Alonso? Is it then more important to extend him, to say, all right, we're going to widen our window. We're going to give this carrot to the fan base. We're going to keep Pete around, keep Pete happy. He wants an extension. He wants to stay. Let's just get this done and not worry about it. There's an argument to do that. Also, though, you've lost all of your leverage on Pete Alonso. All of it. You just got to pay market value, which you could pay market value a year from now. And with that, I have mentioned this before. I do believe that Pete Alonso in a contract year, you might get the best version. You might get the Alonso that is similar to what Aaron Judge did as far as hitting the home run ball prior to his free agency. A guy that's locked in that can push for 60. And that alone on a Mets team that doesn't have a lot in their lineup could carry them. Not to say he's not going to perform on a contract extension, but there is something to be said about a contract year. And I really do believe that the Mets are probably best served in a lot of ways letting this thing play out. And I think that's where this is trending. I wouldn't trade him, though. I need to kind of stake that claim. To me, Pete Alonso is a Met. And even if you don't extend him, if you let the year play out, I think in free agency, he ends up coming back. But you do afford yourself the luxury of considering shopping him at the deadline if you don't extend him and you sort of play out the season, see where you're at, right? Even then, though, I think the return you get at the deadline, how much better is that than the comp pick? And you'd probably be better off keeping Pete happy, keeping him in-house, and then addressing it in the offseason next year. And I do think he'd come back and sign. I don't think you run the risk of pissing him off to the point that he wants to leave if you don't extend him right now. I really don't think so. But those conversations will probably have in spring training. And I think that is something that might happen here, where it's just the best way to get the fan base off your back, to make Pete happy, to make that clubhouse a little bit happier. And who knows, maybe the vibes from that alone are worth it. I don't know. They're in a really tough spot with Pete. I can honestly make an argument on either side of it and be happy with it. So that's where I'm at. The only thing that would frustrate me is if they traded him. I don't think that you're going to get a massive haul for Pete Alonso. Juan Soto is a much better player than Pete Alonso. He just is. He's a safer bet, as far as just overall offensive profile. And for the Yankees in particular, they were the one team that was willing to trade all of that stuff to get him. But even then, the best piece in that deal was Michael King, a guy that doesn't have a ton of control and has yet to really prove that he is good enough to hold down a spot in the rotation. He's got great stuff. I think he will be really good for the Padres this year, but it's not a absolute guarantee. And then they got Drew Thorpe, a good pitching prospect. Now, yeah, you could say, well, the Mets could get Michael King and Drew Thorpe for Pete Alonso, and you throw aside the secondary pieces that went in that trade. In some respects, the team could conceivably be better in this upcoming season beyond because the Mets could use a lot of pitching. But I just don't know if there's another team out there that's going to trade that level of pitching for Pete Alonso. And then if you're just trading Pete Alonso for a prospect, because, hey, the Padres, they're still trying to contend this year. If the Mets were to trade Pete Alonso, it would be sort of admission that they're taking a step back, right? So if you did trade Pete and you're taking a step back, where's the top prospect that you're getting? Well, can you get a really good pitching prospect for Pete Alonso? Maybe. I just don't know. For a guy that's going to make over $20 million, who plays first base, who's a rental, what you're going to get. Again, you might get more at the deadline for him. And honestly, I don't think that anything you get is going to be worth sacrificing a guy that can be a constant 40 home run threat in your lineup for the next 8 years if you eventually get him signed to a contract, whether that's this offseason or next offseason. So I think Pete ultimately stays. Now, if you're not going to do that, I don't know if it's worth trading Quintana. I don't think it's necessarily worth trading Jeff McNeil off a down year. Those guys at the deadline maybe fetch you something. But really, the Mets are in a position where they have added to their team through the margins this offseason, where David Stearns wants to win in his first year in some capacity. He might not want to expend a bunch of long-term resources, tie up your future flexibility, and hurt the Mets' chances in 2025. But 2024 is still a window that you're trying to win. And maybe they're going to try to build their rotation the same way that they're building the bullpen. Maybe it's flyers. Maybe it's getting Frankie Montas and just saying, hey, at least we have a spot for you in the rotation. Maybe it's getting Hyun-Jin Ryu. I don't know. But that's going to leave Mets fans really frustrated come opening day. But it still could be a path to, a season where all of a sudden, Starling Marte looks like 85% of the 2022 All-Star. And Jeff McNeil is a batting champ or vying for one again. And Brandon Nimmo and Lindor are as consistent as they were this past year. And Pete Alonso in a contract year is a monster. And maybe they get more than you think out of DJ Stewart and Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty. And all of a sudden, this team could be a lot of fun. So I see what the Mets' sort of short-term and long-term vision is. But I also think if you are ready to commit $325 million in a 12-year deal with opt-outs to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it makes no sense to me why you wouldn't commit the 5-year, $100 million deal it might take to get Shota Imanaga to have someone in the rotation that's good for this year and good for beyond that, where you can give all those players I just reeled off that have some promise on the position player side, didn't even mention Alvarez in that, where you can give them a fighting chance for another one of those every 5th or every 6 days with your rotation. And again, it also trickles down to the bullpen, finding someone that can fill that spot. Getting another position player in the mix that gives you another bat in that lineup would be amazing. I think the Mets could overpay on 1-year deals to solve the relief pitcher, to solve that extra bat in their lineup. And then for the rotation, they could get creative to either get Imanaga or at least Giolito, where you can tell me there's a guy that has pitched at a big league level for a long time who's at least qualified to give you 160 to 180 innings. Because the signing you made for Severino doesn't guarantee you 180 innings. The trades you made for Adrian Hauser, no, that's more 110 innings. Those two guys, I'd say if you got 120 innings out of each, you're feeling great. And if you actually got 120 good innings out of Tyler McGill, you'd feel amazing. But that's still a lot of innings on the table. Is Jose Quintana going to give you 160? Maybe. Certainly didn't last year. We'll see if he can stay healthy. Kodai Senga last year gave you 166 and a third, I think. Top of my head. Maybe he gives you 180 this year, but there's no guarantee in that. They need innings. We'll see if they actually find a way to sign those innings. Because if they don't, if they just sit back and do nothing, it just sends a bad message to the fan base unless you just get all the way out in front of it, which is you address the fact that it really was Yamamoto or bust. You tell the fans that this is a year where you're going to watch the young talent, where you're going to see Mike Vassell crack an opening day rotation because he could be part of your future, where an Acuna or a Gilbert could push their way up fast, and you're just going to see what you have and commit to spending big in 2025. The Mets have a lot of different directions they can go. But the offseason changed when they didn't get Yamamoto. And to me, it has switched to Imanaga or bust. And I just don't know if they have the appetite to do it. I think that's going to frustrate Mets fans a lot. Even signing Jordan Montgomery to a certain extent. The price tag, I can sort of get my head around not doing it, depending on what he's going to end up signing for. But if this guy gets like 6 for $150 and it's $25 million a year, are you going to tell me the Mets couldn't get into that mix? You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at through all of this. And should probably say the rest of my thoughts on the Mets for after Christmas. The rest of this week, I'll still be doing shows. Hopefully we get some Mets news, but I will be back on Tuesday. Till then, I appreciate all of you who follow, rate, and review. For watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. I want to make a push now to get to 8,000 subs. So I appreciate all of you who subscribe. Want to be a Locked On Mets insider? You can find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now that you come to the end of the show, if you're watching on YouTube, check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything in the world of sports. That is Locked On Sports Today, with our local experts on every team, league-wide experts on each league. You can find Locked On Sports Today on YouTube 24/7.